The National Union of Metalworkers of South Africa, Numsa's 11th National Congress got off to a rocky start when members of the Western Cape region walked out. Now, this follows a court interdict which was handed down on Saturday to halt the gathering. So they said it was being held in contempt of court. The delegates stormed out of the Congress saying that they will not attend an illegitimate gathering. They believe the Labour Court interdict should be respected. They are also upset about excluding Mpumalanga from participating in the Congress. Numsa says the members who left are misguided and that the union has appealed the interdict and can therefore hold the Congress. Well, this National Congress, known as the Workers' Parliament, was last held in 2016. It's very important. On Friday, we are expected to hear who the new national leaders are of South Africa's largest private sector union, Numsa. To discuss, we're joined by political analyst and former Unionist Ebrahim Harvey. Thank you for being with us, Mr. Harvey. Let's start with these suspended members who went to court and did receive an interdict. They say that they're being sidelined by the Secretary General of Numsa, Jim, because, well, one of the reasons they've put forward is that they can't stand for position. He says they're sowing discord through a propaganda campaign. What's your take on the dispute?
No, I must tell you firstly, this is in the entire history of the trade union movement of South Africa. The Congress of a union is the most important event ever. This is the biggest crisis to accompany the Congress of a trade union in the entire history. It's a mess. Jim, this thing is so important that I've decided to devote my News 24 column this week to the crisis in Numsa. The answer to your question, you will find in the court decision on Friday. The court found, this is the Labour Court, the Labour Court found that how Mpumalanga was dealt with and how the suspension of the second Deputy President, Ruth Nkokose, was suspended, was unlawful and unconstitutional. Now, I don't want to mention people's names, but let me tell you, over the years, I've been increasingly hearing from people in Numsa, and especially the Socialist Workers' Revolutionary Party that was formed by Numsa, of a creeping authoritarianism on the part of Jim, who appears to control Numsa with an iron fist, whether it's the Central Committee or any other structure of Numsa, and parading that that Numsa is worker controlled and democracy reigns. It is to the contrary. That is why when I heard about this thing, I wasn't surprised that this was the latest development against that background. Jim, I'm afraid, by what he has done, has dug himself into a hole. And in fact, the column I write this week is headed, "Is this the end of Jim?" I really think he has overstretched himself.
So what you're saying is it's an illegitimate Congress that he's pushing forward with, and therefore leaders that will be elected, I mean, there will be huge contestation and it may all be thrown out in the end.
No, but it's not just that. They should never have had the Congress.
Could it go further and result in a split of
Numsa? The Labour Court said, have you read a statement today by unsuspended Numsa leadership? It's a very important statement they released today. A statement by the unsuspended leadership of Numsa. They allege that, in fact, what Jim did by calling a national office bearers meeting, which included the second deputy president, it included her. And it excluded her when that national office bearers meeting called a special central committee meeting. Now, how can you exclude somebody who, in fact, initiated this legal action last week? She was excluded. The Mpumalanga region was also unconstitutionally excluded. The Labour Court found they were also excluded. That is why the Western Cape walked out. They could see this is really, I mean, it's impossible. They have ignored, to their detriment, I believe. They think that by virtue of what they've done, they've dealt with the order of the Labour Court. They haven't. Numerous violations of unlawful violations unconstitutional violations that the court order found who has been perpetuated.
Yeah.
That is why Numsa is not there. And in fact, the chief protagonist, this woman, the second deputy president, was excluded from the National Office Bearers meeting and the Central Committee meeting that was called.
I'd really like to talk about her. You're talking about Ruth Nhlokotse as Nhlokotso. She says now she's being targeted because she wants to run for president. So this is being seen as factionalism. I mean, how much power does she wield in her own person?
No, she wields considerable power. That's precisely why I think Jim and them, they gathered that she will probably win the presidency. Look at the timing of the suspensions. It occurs on the eve, deliberately, of the Congress. That is when the suspensions occur. And no doubt, I think she would have won. And it was to counter that she, and remember before her, over 50 other office bearer shop stewards were suspended unlawfully and unconstitutionally. So you see, altogether, I believe that Jim has dug himself into a hole, and how he has handled the court interdict and proceeded with the Congress in Cape Town, despite the order. And in fact, this suspended committee of Numsa today releasing a statement listing about 10 to 12 reasons why this Congress going ahead is itself unlawful and unconstitutional in terms of the court order.
There's a history here as well, before we run out of time. She has raised concern about 360 Life, which is part of Numsa's investment arm. There were numerous claims that claims from members weren't being paid out, talk of the company paying for parties for officials. Was it right for her to raise those concerns?
Absolutely. In fact, Irvin Jim's daughter has been one of the people who has benefited from that, what has happened there with that company. So very clearly, although it never featured in the Labour Court decision to the extent that it should have, it's a big part of the background of how this rising authoritarianism of Jim in particular, how he dealt with that investment company and what has happened there, has been completely unsatisfactory. So there's multiple aspects to this gathering crisis in Numsa, which has now escalated to a point where I really think you have a looming split with Numsa.
And there's even another layer to this. So you say this could potentially split Numsa, the biggest trade union we have. Ruth Nhlokotso works next to Zwelinzima Vavi in the umbrella body, SAFTU. Apparently, Jim and Vavi have very different opinions about whether Numsa should have political aspirations or not. Could that also be at play here?
Well, certainly, but I mean, Numsa and SAFTU are very politically inclined trade unions, you know. I mean, Vavi has made that clear. I don't think that's the point. It's the nature of the politics that Jim is pursuing. There are lots of other issues I can't raise now. Who's funding Numsa globally? Who's also been funding this publication, the new frame that is going down at the moment? There are lots of issues, you know.
Yeah. Well, that has been made public. Somebody said to have affiliations to China. That is already in the public domain.
Yes, it's a major matter, you see. And Jim calls the shots, whether it's with that or any other matter. That is the problem, and he hides behind the claim that Numsa is worker-controlled. Never before has Numsa not been worker-controlled. In fact, he has trampled on workers' rights, as the Labour Court decision has indicated very clearly.
All right, very strong views. Thank you very much, Dr. Ebrahim Harvey, political analyst and former unionist, saying that this Congress should not be going ahead. It is underway. It was planned for this week in Cape Town.